Once again, welcome back to the program. This is the campaign edition of Choice 2017. It's here. We're going to trail for you all the campaigns, the rallies, by everyone, But basically today, the two main protagonists, that is NASA and Jubilee, are on the road currently. President Uhuru Kenyatta is in Mombasa. We do expect him to address his supporters at Jomvu Kuu. Raila Odinga and his NASA brigade are on a vote hunting mission in Nyanza, to be specific, in Nyamira County. We're going to join up or link up with our reporter Rashid Ronald there for us. But for now, let's focus on another very interesting county, that is Uasin Gishu County, where there's a very hot contest between Buzeki and the current governor Mandago. Let's listen into what they had to say in the respective campaign trails before.
Kwa hivyo nawaambia watulize boli, uwanja ni mdogo, wasiongee mingi, waende wauze sera, kwa sababu raia ya Uasin Gishu wanataka sera. Tarehe 8 tukutane.
Well, it's not just Buzeki who has been active there on the campaign trail in Uasin Gishu. Let's listen into the current governor Mandago as well.
Mwerefu yuko mashakani. Waswahili husema mwerefu mjinga akierefuka, mwerefu yuko mashakani.
Of course, that is the current Uasin Gishu governor Mandago there on his campaign trail. For the first time, the info truck, that is the opinion poll, had placed Buzeki ahead of the current governor. They had placed Buzeki at 54% and the current governor at 42%. Once again, Mark, the politics of opinion polls, how true, how factual are they?
In this particular county, it's a play of very many interesting dynamics. First and foremost, Uasin Gishu is a metropolitan county in the sense that it has the Kisii, the Luya, the Kikuyu, and the Kalenjin there. Secondly, there is a statement that Mandago made a few months ago that was very divisive in its nature, and he tended to alienate every Nanandi in Uasin Gishu in that statement. Yes. I think what Buzeki has been able to do, he's been able to coalesce those ones on Nanandis within the Kalenjin community and the greater communities that also abide and reside in Uasin Gishu. So to me, this opinion poll does seem factual, and I think it's a good thing for this country, because this is one of the counties, if the opinion poll is to be believed, where the people are saying, you know what, we will not support someone who's running on a very, not even tribal basis. He's even taken it down to the sub-tribe level. And I think that's a good thing for a nation when we're standing up and saying, you know what, we don't want this kind of thing. The other thing, of course, is Buzeki is young. He's energetic. He's giving, his campaign has that flair that would catch on with the younger generation who are the higher population. So I think that the poll is quite accurate on this one. In fact, I would think Buzeki might likely win with more.
Owedi, I'm sure you'll agree with me, Uasin Gishu is one of the counties that has become a hard nut to crack for Jubilee.
The game being played in Uasin Gishu is very difficult to understand. This is the first place where I saw William Ruto ask Buzeki to leave it for Mandago, and Buzeki refused. And I expect Uasin Gishu...
He was part of Jubilee initially.
Yeah, of course he was.
Party primaries.
Of course he was.
He's now an independent candidate.
Yeah, he is. But I was just imagining a scenario where Raila Odinga would ask somebody in Kisumu to step down for another, and he does not do it. And he goes ahead to have a very high points in the opinion polling. But as I told you earlier, the opinion polls...
That tells you people they are independent, perhaps.
The opinion polls depends on who asks for them. These days, opinion polls, you ask for it, and you also tell them results. Somebody once made a joke that when you arrive in India for education, the Muindi asks you, which degree do you want, law or medicine? Then you say medicine. Do you want the degree now or when you complete? This is what these days happen with opinion polls. They ask you... you want an opinion poll, what results do you want? And this is our bill. Then you pay, they give it to you. And then you go and play with it. Because it's a political opinion poll. It never works anymore.
We declare they're dismissing opinion polls once again. Prof.
I would not dismiss opinion polls. I think it will be foolhardy. All I said is that they are not gospel. But they are serious things to consider. as Mark pointed out, there is a problem in Uasin Gishu. And the governor has presented himself as being bellicose and hostile to almost everybody, except a few people around him. And that's what's giving advantage to Buzeki, because all the others who feel threatened by Mandago then see Buzeki as their man. They may not know anything else about Buzeki apart from the fact that he's a businessman. And Mandago is also in business. But the fact that he comes out as an alternative to somebody who presents an image of bellicosity, he comes in as an assuring person, as a safe person, as opposed to a person who might plunge Uasin Gishu into chaos. And as been pointed out, Uasin Gishu is a serious metropolitan county. See, they elected an Indian from India
as a member of parliament.
As a likely member of parliament. I was very happy to see that in that primary. It showed the level of maturity that the people of Uasin Gishu have. If that is the indication, and if there are those strong feelings, not just in one section, but across the board, then the opinion poll is likely to be very accurate.
Mark, do you agree with Prof that perhaps or maybe party politics might not play a role in Uasin Gishu, or rather people will look at just the individuals and vote on that basis?
I honestly do not think it's an Uasin Gishu issue. It's a countrywide issue. If you look at the number of independents in this particular election, both in Nyanza, in Central, in Uasin Gishu, they are all over the place. In fact, a good friend of mine is also running as an independent in Nairobi. What does that tell you? The reality is, if you look at the various polls and the various way in which people are voting, for example, Nairobi is a good example. Esther Passaris, in terms of her probability to win, is at 56% in Nairobi. In the same county where the governor who's in the same party seems to be at 44% together with Mike Sonko, who's at 43%. So the reality of the matter is the 6-piece voting system is in its dying throes. And that is what we envisioned when we promulgated the Constitution, where we created an intensity at the local level of politics, where people felt like, I do not necessarily need to fight for the presidency. The governor that I choose needs to be someone who represents what I want and what I need. And this particular election is going to show that. It's going to show not just in Uasin Gishu, but in a lot of counties. You're going to see a lot of independents give people a run for their money. And that's it's going to happen a lot. It's going to happen with in Homa Bay, for example, and not to disparage you, sir. In Homa Bay with this guy.
Awiti does not come from there.
No, I come from
you come from there. Oh, there you're correct.
Yes. So Awiti is in trouble in Homa Bay. He's got the party nomination, but it's not looking like he's going to take it home. And this is a phenomenon across the country. And if you realized the principles, both Raila and Uhuru and Ruto and Kalonzo, when they tried to push this conversation, the independents told them, this is our fight. Just leave it. And it's also a sign of the maturity of politics in this country, where just because I'm in a political party does not mean I cannot choose outside of it. And I think it's a good thing for a nation.
I think
6-piece, let Ovidi react to that first.
That 6-piece is dying, that one I do agree with. It is not going to be there in the near future.
What does that mean?
The unfortunate thing...
Does it mean that we don't have strong political parties in place?
We do have strong political parties, but lack of space to move from one party to the other in the last minute is what brought this independent thing. So that all those people who lost, the ones who lost fairly, the one who lost unfairly, the one who never even tried, all of them ran to independent and say tulinyang'anywa.
Yes.
That is what is happening. But this was also a mistake that was made by the party leaders who mobilized this idea that there will be no party hopping in the last minute without noticing that there would be a loophole in the independent. And I think that is good for democracy as of now. But the problem we have in Kenya, which I must also remind you about, it is something which Socrates complained about many years ago. We have one vote, one man. An enlightened political analyst like him has one vote. One lady in the villages of Kibera who has no idea the role of the person he's electing also has one vote. Now you are giving him 2 people here, one to choose one to be his governor. He will go and choose the one who has given him a very short-term solution to a very pressing problem. The other one who has been planning and making things ready to give him a long-term solutions will not count in his thoughts. So in the end, his problem will be solved for 2 days, but in the end he will have more serious problems in the future. On the contrary, you would have elected a man who would have given you a long-term solution, going through a small problem for a short time.
Prof, you wanted to comment about the 6th piece?
Yeah, and the primaries that were a total mess are responsible for the big numbers of independents, which means that the party leaders, organizers, are confused people, because they should not have done what they did.
From both main political
parties?
Yeah,
the party leaders.
Yes.
Because it's the parties that messed up. People turned out very willingly to vote for whoever they wanted. And then you had these strange incidents of 2 people being declared the winners and having 2 returning officers for the same. It was just a mess. Let me add, the voter, whether a university graduate or somebody who sells mandazi, is increasingly very enlightened. And the voter is smarter than the leader. That smart voter can tell who the right candidate is, who is not just for the short term, unga, but for the long term. When they get into that voting booth, and he or she starts wondering, of all these people, who am I safe with? Who will not jeopardize my interest? Who will not threaten my life? That person will vote the right way for the best interest that he can come up. So I will not have this skewing of giving the elite more votes or more weight. No. The bottom line is that we are all citizens. And we agreed that there should be an entity called Kenya.
Yeah.
And the people who live in Kenya are all citizens, and they have equal rights and equal opportunities. So, and then let's give people, the voter, the credit that the person deserves. To say that some people do not know what they are doing is a different matter. 1 or 2, Mark, but not everybody.
Yes. Okay, Mark, there's these issues to do with, the tyranny of numbers, where so many members of parliament tend to come from a certain political party.
Yes.
With the upsurge of independence,
yes,
do you think there will be a scenario where we will not have the tyranny of numbers anymore in parliament?
It's going to be very, very interesting and a very new place for the country to navigate through.
Yes.
If indeed, and let me talk about both the MCA seats and the parliamentary seats. If indeed these 4,000 plus independent candidates, even if they just get 20 seats in parliament, they create a force that is going to be very, very interesting, in the sense that right now we are debating that they are Jubilee leaning, they are NASA leaning independents. That could be something that they are pushing as far as the electorate is concerned, to endear themselves to them. However, when you get into parliament and you are an independent, there is a certain psychological difference between you and the party parliamentarian. The party parliamentarian is required by the regulations of the party to act a certain way. The independent can actually choose to act independent. This is what we are not considering. They may be leaning now, but when you get there and you have the office and the power to do what you want, what exactly will you do is the question that we are asking here. That's the first question. The second question, when you look at now the gubernatorial seats, a governor who wins as an independent without MCAs from his party, how does that play out? That is going to be another very interesting scenario. So it's going to change. If we have significant numbers of these independents get into the August House, then we are going to have a very interesting political scenario looking forward.
Owidi, first of all, very important question. How independent, are these independent candidates? Because all of them seem to have been in a certain political party. It's only that they've lost during the party primaries. Now they've decided to become independent.
They are not truly independent as of now. But after elections, they will be independent properly. Now they are still going into the electorate and telling them, mi nilikuwa nimenyang'anywa. So that is why I have moved to independent. Otherwise, I belong to Uhuru Kenyatta or Raila Odinga. But once they will be elected and they are seated there pretty, watakuwa wabunge huru, they will be free MPs or whoever they are. Even the governors, they will be free. They will not listen to anyone because the people have given them the mantle and they will run away with it. So the party will not use them for any use if it is not in their agreement. You see, right now, if an MP runs rogue, the party can de-whip him. They can be removed from those committees and all such things. And there's an avenue for punishing them. However, once this independence goes in there, they will be purely independent. But as of now, we don't have anybody independent.
Of course, this is the debate that will continue. Prof, you'll have your comment on that. But for now, of course, it is an electioneering year. We're just 22 days away from the general elections. And already there are those who start casting aspersions, especially to the electoral body, that is IEBC. How well are they prepared for this very important task? Up until now, they've not yet printed the presidential ballot papers. That is because they've gone ahead and appealed that ruling that was made by the High Court that suspended that tender of the printing of ballot papers. Let's listen to what the IEBC chairman Wafula Chebukati had to say.
This show of political intolerance should not be condoned in a democracy like ours. The objective of the Electoral Code of Conduct is to provide a conducive environment for free, fair and credible elections. The Commission has therefore dispatched its team of investigators to collect more information on the above cases and others. We wish to reiterate that under the provisions of the Electoral Code of Conduct, the Commission could take several measures, including fining offenders, suspending campaigns in areas prone to violence, and or barring candidates participating in the election. We call on all candidates, political parties, and their supporters to conduct their campaigns with utmost restraint and in strict adherence to the Electoral Code of Conduct.
The IEBC chair, they are talking about political tolerance. We're going to talk about the ballot papers because that is a major problem, I think, facing IEBC. But so many people have been talking about, whether we're going to have a peaceful election or not. Yesterday during CS Interior, that is Joseph Kaiseri's burial, we've seen so many different speakers talking about the need to have a peaceful election. Among them was a former, Tanzanian Prime Minister, Edwin Lowassa. Why do you think there's this fear surrounding the election?
When Kenyans speak of violence, I find it very funny. I find it almost humorous. If you've traveled across Africa, and I've consulted in various African countries, there's an ingredient that is missing in this particular election for violence. For violence to occur, there must be planning and there must be finance for it. It does not occur in a vacuum. There must be someone who's willing to put in the planning and the finance to sustain it. Because if you're going to take violent people from place X and take them to place Y, you'll have to transport them, you have to feed them, you have to do all those things. So I really doubt that we've met that threshold. Because if you read the 2007 report, we know there were financiers and there were planners for this thing. That, however, does not bar the people who may be disgruntled because their person did not win from demonstrating. And demonstrating even in the United States of America, when Trump won, a lot of people went to the streets, okay? And that is normal across the world. But to talk about violence in a sustainable way, I don't think it's going to happen in this particular election. The second thing that we need to remember is we have a police service that is actionable, that is in place, that is able to contain these matters. But where is the fear coming from? The fear is coming from the fact that people who have political office are instigating this violence. They are the ones who are pushing for it. You know, when I think it's Kajwang who said, was it Kajwang who said the other day that Ruto is not invited in Kisumu, and that went to Baringo, and then NASA t-shirts were being
So such
banned.
statements
Yeah, we need to be responsible with our statements, because that puts up emotions against people. And what do the leaders need to do? I think both Uhuru and Raila and Kalonzo and Ruto need to come out very clearly and say, we are against violence, we will not condone this, and they need to push it as hard as possible. The IEBC on its part needs to exercise its powers with swiftness. You know, whether it's fining these people or suspending campaigns for 2-3 days, there's nothing that hurts a campaign more than your candidate cannot campaign for 3-4 days. That affects you. So the IEBC needs to show it has teeth as quickly as possible.
Many thanks for that. Of course, in terms of leadership, we've seen President Uhuru Kenyatta, NASA leader Raila Odinga, and the deputy president watching some athletics, that IAAF competition that is going on at Kasarani. Do you agree with
Yusuf, this idea of Kajwang, you said what, so there was violence, is nonsense. Let me tell you, Kajwang has no power to just by word of mouth instigate violence in any part of Lowland or even in this country. Kajwang just expressed his personal opinion that Ruto should not go there because that is the feeling around there.
Just give an example. There's need for politicians
if you watch carefully, the heckling in Mbita and the heckling in Kisumu, they were perpetrated by people who stood in front in very well marked red T-shirts and koffias, and the people who heckled the president. And it is very funny that no one was arrested for that. I have participated in an arrangement for a presidential visit. Every 10 meters, somebody stands there, either as an officer of the law, or a policeman, or an informer. So there is no way you can heckle the president, 100 people, and not even one is arrested. The truth of the matter is this.
Something happened in Baringo, remember?
Let me tell you, I know the chain, how it worked. The truth of the matter is this. The Jubilee agents in Kisumu and Mbita organized the heckling so that they trigger this heckling in the Jubilee stronghold so that Raila Odinga cannot go into those strongholds and campaign there peacefully. This is what happened, and it is, and that also explains why even in Thika, no one was arrested for that heckling. How was that possible?
Of course, this is not
because it worked well for those who arranged it.
We're just 22 days away from the general election. There's need for political tolerance.
Yeah, there is need for political tolerance, understanding, and my friend Owidi is allowed to be wrong. But it is true. There may be a few people who are bent on creating some sort of crisis. There may be a few people who want to throw some stones, but generally there will be peace. The scenario is not the same as 2007. There were a lot of mistakes made in 2007. I don't think we are having the same scenario. The general, before God took him, made it very clear there would not be anything like that. And Oroa Ojode was and Saitoti, both of them were categorical. As long as they are there, there will be nothing like that. And I'm sure our security organs are prepared for mischief makers. And they should be dealt with forthrightly. There should be no apologies about it. But the number of people who may be thinking that way are comparatively few. So the election will be peaceful. Now, the possible incitement.
As you finish,
it is true that there are some forces that would like to see chaos. In 2013, we saw some strange. Was it one of those international media houses telling us that the people are and it turned out it was a fabrication? We have seen some statements coming from outside the country trying to tell us that we are going to have violence. Now, those is the imagination, and they're allowed to have it. But when then it is translated, it will mean that that's what the situation in Kenya. I think you are stretching the imagination.
I think you've delivered your point. Mark, violence doesn't just come abruptly, number one. It normally comes when there's a dispute as to the election results. And let's focus on IEBC. Of course, they're the referee, come August 8th. How well are they prepared? from your own point of view?
You know, the IEBC is an organ I'm getting tired of speaking about because it's like they don't listen and worse, they don't talk. The IEBC has a political communicative role of setting the country at ease. This is something they cannot run away from. Now, in my opinion, they have not done a good job of that. They are not creating confidence in the people. Now, I was a presidential agent in 2013, and I have had the pleasure of seeing the KIM's instrumentation and talking to a few of the commissioners. Now, compared to 2013, we are doing much better. Can we do more? Yes, we can. But the question now, the real question in this particular week, is the printing of presidential ballot papers. Now, Al Ghurair said their deadline for presidential ballot papers is 17th. The ruling is expected on Thursday. 17th is Monday.
It's tomorrow.
Yes. And then the ruling is expected on Thursday. Now, the question is, all the issues that were laid against Al Ghurair were laid to rest by the courts, and Al Ghurair was cleared in terms of being able to print these things with the caveat of public participation. Now we have a conundrum, because if we're going to tender again, the time that is required to retender is not there. And if Al Ghurair is given, the question now arises that will NASA and its affiliate parties agree for that to happen? And thirdly, if they don't agree that to happen, what solution do we have? Now, I've talked to a few professionals, and they're saying government printer. Now, government printer is even more government than Al Ghurair. So those are the questions that are there. But I think the onus is on IEBC to come out and create confidence, not for the sake of political parties, but confidence in the average Kenyan who wants to see a good election. That is what IEBC needs to do, and they need to get on it as soon as yesterday.
What we do very briefly before we take a break.
Yusuf, you know, we have to understand the genesis of these things. Immediately the court ruled, IEBC said they will both go to appeal and also call for the tenders. Then President Uhuru Kenyatta goes to cabinet with Ruto and points fingers at them that I really want them. And I said, I was right here when they were there live. And I said, what President Uhuru is doing right now is giving IEBC the cue of what to do. President is telling him, this is what I am interested in seeing. And that is when they stopped this idea of tendering. So they are doing the Jubilee bidding. The day IEBC will detach itself from Jubilee, then we can be sure we are going to have a very credible election, and violence will be a thing of the past. Because violence must be triggered. It doesn't matter how much you plan for it. It has to be triggered like any other fire.
Prof, I'll get your reaction on that shortly. Of course, this has been the campaign edition of Choice 2017. And speaking about the campaigns, President Uhuru Kenyatta, we do expect him to address his supporters any moment from now at John Vuku, that is in Mombasa, and Mvita. ODM leaders are there. And speaking about the main, NASA principles, they have zeroed in Nyanza. That is where they are on a charm offensive, trying to get support from the residents of Nyamira. We have all those rallies covered for you right here on KTN. We'll be right back with much more. Don't go too far.
This is KTN News.